You know, it's a peculiar thing about human beings. We are creatures of story, of meaning, of responsibility, and when we engage with others, especially in relationships, we enter into a kind of sacred contract. But when that contract is broken, when one person insists upon inflating their ego at the expense of the other, that's when you encounter the narcissist. Now, here's the tragic irony. The narcissist, in their blindness, believes they are untouchable, believes that their games, their manipulation, their arrogance will sustain them indefinitely. But life doesn't bend so easily to ego, and when you withdraw your presence, when you reclaim your dignity and refuse to be an object in someone else's self-centered narrative, something remarkable happens. They realize, often far too late, that the very foundation of their existence, the attention, the care, the meaning that you provided is gone, and without that, life to them becomes empty, hollow. It sucks, because here's the reality. It is not power, nor manipulation, nor domination that sustains a person. It is truth, it is love, it is responsibility. And when those are absent, no amount of pride can fill the void. The illusion of control collapses when you withdraw, and that collapse is not just a small psychological crack, it's a shattering of the very scaffolding that the narcissist has been standing on. You see, narcissists build their lives around the idea that they are the ones who dictate the terms of every interaction. They believe, often with remarkable confidence, that they can pull the strings of those around them, that they can bend reality through charm, manipulation, or sheer force of will. And for a while, that illusion can seem very convincing, not only to those caught in their orbit, but even to themselves. They convince themselves they are indispensable, that the people in their lives will never walk away, that their dominance is secure. But here's the paradox. Control that depends entirely on another person's compliance is not real control. It's borrowed, fragile, conditional. The narcissist can puff themselves up, but that inflation requires an audience. Their dominance requires submission, and when you, the person who has been silently fueling their ego, decide to step back, suddenly the stage is empty, the applause ceases, the entire performance collapses. The withdrawal of your presence strikes at the core of the narcissist's false identity. It's not merely about losing companionship or affection. It's about losing the mirror they desperately need to reflect back their inflated self-image. Narcissists rarely look inward, because inward there is nothing stable to find. They look outward, constantly scanning for confirmation of their superiority, for validation of their worth. When you are no longer there to provide that validation, they are forced, often for the first time, to face the void within, and this is devastating for them because the illusion of control is replaced by the harsh truth that they were never truly in control at all. This collapse also exposes another hidden dynamic, their dependency on the very person they sought to dominate. They might have told themselves, and even told you, that they didn't need you, that they were above you. But the reality is inverted. They needed you desperately, though never in a healthy way. They needed your attention like oxygen. They needed your emotional energy to sustain the image of themselves they tried so hard to project. When you take that away, it becomes painfully clear that the power they thought they possessed was never theirs. It was yours, disguised by their manipulation. In the silence left behind by your absence, the narcissist often experiences a terrifying realization. Life no longer feels under their control, because the very foundation of their control was built upon your willingness to participate. Without you, the illusion crumbles and the truth is laid bare. Power built on exploitation is unsustainable, and control rooted in manipulation dissolves the moment its target walks away. What remains is emptiness and a stark recognition that life without the person they undervalued, dismissed, or mistreated feels unbearably hollow. Ego cannot survive without external validation, and this truth is nowhere more evident than in the life of a narcissist. For them, the self is not something solid, something carefully cultivated through responsibility, integrity, and genuine effort. It is instead a fragile construction, held together by the opinions and reactions of others. Unlike a healthy person who can anchor their sense of worth in their values, their achievements, and their ability to endure difficulty, the narcissist floats untethered, constantly scanning the horizon for someone, anyone, who will tell them they matter. Without that validation, their ego begins to disintegrate because it was never rooted in something real to begin with. This is why narcissists surround themselves with people they can impress, manipulate, or exploit. They need the constant supply of admiration, attention, and even fear to feel like they exist. It's not just about being liked, it's about being noticed, about proving to themselves that they have power and significance. But the tragedy here is that this power is never intrinsic. It depends entirely on other people playing their part. And so, despite all their bravado and arrogance, narcissists are astonishingly dependent. Their very sense of identity is outsourced when you take away your validation, whether it's your admiration, your agreement, or even your tolerance of their behavior. Their carefully constructed identity begins to collapse. What they once projected as strength is revealed to be weakness. What they claimed was independence is shown to be dependence. In essence, their ego was always parasitic, feeding on the energy of others, unable to sustain itself in solitude. It's worth noting how terrifying this is for them. To a narcissist, external validation functions much like food and water. It's the lifeblood of their psychological survival. When it disappears, they often react with anger, desperation, or frantic attempts to reassert control. They may lash out, attempting to draw you back into their orbit because your presence is not optional. It is essential to the survival of their ego. And yet, the more they try to control, the more obvious it becomes that they are powerless without the very person they dismissed or mistreated. This dynamic also reveals a deeper psychological principle. Authentic confidence can withstand isolation, but counterfeit confidence cannot. A person who has built their sense of self on truth, responsibility, and competence can endure rejection or solitude because they know who they are independent of others. But the narcissist cannot bear this weight. Strip away the external applause, and they are left staring at an empty stage, realizing there was never a real actor behind the mask, only the mask itself. So when you refuse to provide validation, you are not simply removing attention, you are dismantling the very fuel that kept their ego alive. And in that void, they are confronted with a devastating reality. Without external validation, their ego cannot survive. What is left is not strength, but fragility, not grandeur, but the truth of their own emptiness. Absence exposes the emptiness they tried to hide, and this is perhaps one of the most painful truths for a narcissist to confront. While you are present in their life, they can disguise their inner void behind your energy, your attention, and your presence. You become, unknowingly, a shield that covers the emptiness within them. As long as you are there, they can pretend, both to you and to themselves, that they are whole, that they are powerful, that their world is complete. But the moment you withdraw, the disguise is stripped away. Suddenly, there is no one left to absorb the chaos they carry inside. The silence of your absence echoes louder than any words, because it reveals the hollowness they've always been running from. The narcissist spends much of their life constructing a performance. They play roles, charming, confident, superior, untouchable, yet behind these roles lies an unspoken terror, the fear that, without others propping them up, they are nothing. When you leave, this fear comes crashing down upon them. The emptiness they worked so hard to bury with distractions and manipulation is laid bare. There is no stage, no audience, no applause, just themselves, and the truth that they are incomplete. This is why absence hurts them more than confrontation ever could. If you fight with them, they can feed on the conflict. If you argue, they can twist the narrative and use it to fuel their ego. But when you are simply gone, when your energy no longer circulates in their world, they cannot manipulate the silence. They cannot reshape your absence into something flattering. Instead, it acts like a mirror, reflecting their lack of substance. For many narcissists, this emptiness manifests as restlessness, irritability, even despair. They may suddenly feel the weight of loneliness pressing in on them. They may recognize, though often only fleetingly, that they are not nearly as powerful or self-sufficient as they claimed. Your absence makes visible what was always hidden, that their sense of self was fragile, dependent, and incomplete. They are forced to feel the void they spent years denying, and here's the crucial psychological point. Emptiness is not something you can run from forever. It catches up with you when the external distractions fade. The narcissist tries to fill it with attention, status, or possessions, but none of these can replace the depth of genuine connection. When you step away, you take with you something far more valuable than they realize: authentic presence, a real bond, a stabilizing force. Without it, they are left with their own hollowness, and for someone who has spent their entire life escaping that reality, it is unbearable. So, your absence doesn't just leave a gap, it reveals the truth. It exposes the emptiness they tried to cover with ego, with manipulation, with lies, and that exposure is what makes life, without you, feel not only less satisfying, but deeply intolerable. It is not simply that they miss you, it is that, in losing you, they are confronted with themselves, and themselves without the disguise is emptiness. ChatGPT said, "Your boundaries force them to face reality, and that reality is the one thing a narcissist spends their entire life avoiding." They thrive on crossing lines, bending rules, and reshaping the truth to suit their desires. As long as you allow it, they will stretch the limits of your patience, your kindness, and your willingness to give, because boundaries threaten the fantasy they live in. But when you finally draw the line, when you make it clear that you will no longer tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or abuse, you shatter the illusion that they are untouchable. Suddenly, they must confront the truth that their control is not absolute, that their dominance has limits, and that other people have the power to resist. For a narcissist, boundaries are more than rules. They are reminders that they are not the center of the universe. Boundaries expose the fact that other people are not extensions of their will but independent beings with dignity, autonomy, and self-respect. This realization is profoundly destabilizing for them. They have built their identity on the belief that they can shape reality by bending others to their needs. When you refuse to comply, you are not just saying no to a specific behavior, you are rejecting the very foundation of their false self. The impact of this is immense. For perhaps the first time, they are forced to face the fact that their tactics don't work on everyone, that their charm isn't irresistible, and that their power has limits. Boundaries hold up a mirror to the narcissist, reflecting back the truth they despise. They are not in complete control, and they are not as powerful as they believed. This confrontation with reality often triggers rage or denial, because to acknowledge it would mean dismantling the identity they cling to. But here's the deeper truth: boundaries don't just protect you, they reveal them. They strip away the layers of manipulation and force the narcissist to encounter the emptiness and insecurity they hide beneath the mask. When you stand firm, you expose their dependence on others for validation and control. You show them in no uncertain terms that their ego cannot dictate every outcome, and while they may react with anger or attempts to reassert dominance, deep down, they recognize the shift. They no longer hold the position of power. This is why boundaries are so threatening to them. They represent truth, and truth is the one force the narcissist cannot fully manipulate. Your decision to enforce boundaries breaks the cycle of their control, and in doing so, it forces them into contact with reality. The reality that relationships require respect, that love cannot be coerced, and that control is an illusion sustained only as long as others permit it. So when you hold your ground, you do more than protect yourself. You dismantle their fantasy. You force them to see the cracks in their own story, and once seen, those cracks can no longer be unseen. That's when life begins to unravel for them, because reality, once revealed, cannot be ignored. True power lies in walking away, not in staying, and this is one of the most counterintuitive truths that narcissists never understand until it's too late. They believe power is about control, about bending others to their will, about being the loudest voice in the room or the one who dictates the terms of the relationship. But real power isn't about domination, it's about choice. And the most profound choice you can ever make in the face of manipulation or abuse is the choice to walk away. That single act, silent and decisive, dismantles the entire system of control the narcissist has built. When you stay, even if you resist or fight back, you remain part of the game they have designed. Narcissists thrive on conflict just as much as they thrive on admiration, because both feed their sense of significance. Your anger, your explanations, your attempts to make them see reason, all of it provides fuel. But when you withdraw, when you decide that you will no longer participate, you take away the very oxygen that their ego depends on. In that moment, you reclaim power, because you are no longer reacting, no longer giving, no longer trapped in their performance. Walking away is powerful precisely because it is an act of self-respect. It says, without words, you no longer have the right to define me, to drain me, or to control me. And that declaration cannot be manipulated because it is not open for debate. It is final. Narcissists who build their lives on exploiting the willingness of others to remain entangled are left powerless in the face of someone who refuses to engage. They can rage, they can plead, they can attempt to lure you back, but the decision to walk away leaves them confronting the one thing they cannot control, your independence. What makes this act so devastating to them is that it reveals the truth about power itself. They thought they were strong because you stayed, because they could bend your emotions or draw out your loyalty, but the reality is inverted. The strength was always yours. You had the ability to leave all along, and when you finally exercise it, they see that their supposed dominance was nothing more than dependence disguised as authority. The ground shifts beneath them, and they are left exposed. In a deeper sense, walking away is also a refusal to be defined by their emptiness. Narcissists project their inner void onto others, making you feel small, inadequate, or unworthy so that they can feel large by comparison. But when you walk away, you demonstrate that you refuse to live inside their distorted reality. You step back into your own truth, into a life where dignity, peace, and self-respect matter more than their approval. That act of courage is a kind of quiet revolution because it breaks the cycle not just for you, but for them. And here's the irony: what they interpret as your weakness, your kindness, your patience, your love, was never weakness at all. It was strength misused and unrecognized. The moment you walk away, that strength is revealed in its purest form. And that revelation is what makes life without you unbearable for the narcissist. Without genuine connection, their life becomes meaningless, and this is the final and most devastating realization for the narcissist. All along, they have convinced themselves that success lies in admiration, control, and the ability to dominate the people around them. They measure their worth by attention, by victories in conflict, by the fleeting thrill of being desired or feared. But what they cannot manufacture, what they cannot fake, is the depth and substance of true human connection. And when you leave, when you take away the authenticity and loyalty that you once offered, the emptiness of their life becomes impossible to ignore. Human beings are wired for meaning, and meaning is born in relationships. It's not in the applause of strangers or the illusions of control, but in the shared trust between people who genuinely care for each other. For most, this truth anchors life with stability and purpose. But the narcissist, blinded by ego, treats relationships not as sacred bonds, but as resources to be exploited. They mistake attention for love, manipulation for intimacy, and control for security. Yet once those illusions are stripped away, they are left with nothing but surface-level interactions, shallow connections that cannot nourish the soul. This is why life without you feels so unbearable to them. You provided something they could not create on their own authenticity. You offered emotional depth, patience, and presence. Even if they dismissed it or took it for granted, it was still there, anchoring their life in ways they barely understood. And when that is gone, the substitutes they turn to flattery from others, fleeting admiration, new conquests, fail to satisfy. These replacements are hollow echoes of the real connection they lost, and the hollowness becomes louder with each attempt to fill it. What makes this particularly painful is the recognition that genuine connection cannot be controlled or demanded. It must be earned, reciprocated, and nurtured. The narcissist, by refusing responsibility and humility, sabotages their own chance at building anything real. So when they find themselves alone, when they feel the absence of true intimacy, they are forced to confront the tragic truth They had what they needed, but they destroyed it, and once it's gone, no amount of ego or bravado can bring it back. This absence of meaning often leaves them restless, bitter, or even despairing. They may try to distract themselves with achievements, possessions, or new admirers, but none of it sticks. Because deep down, they know that these things are empty without someone who sees them, not as a mask, not as a performance, but as a human being. And that is precisely what they lost when you walked away. In the end, the narcissist realizes that life without genuine connection is not just lonely, it is meaningless, and this is the cruel irony of their story. The very thing they devalued, mocked, or exploited was the one thing that gave their life substance. Without it, all that remains is emptiness, and no illusion of power can ever disguise that truth.